Hello, and welcome everyone to our second edition of the Nextv Ad Europe conference. So it's our virtual event focused on the theme of TV advertising in the European market and what are the upcoming innovations, what are the developments that the industry is looking forward to. So today we will dive into the topics that are shaking our current ecosystem with very insightful panel discussions regrouping industry experts. We will explore the latest developments of the industry and how digital and broadcast ad inventories and strategies are getting integrated with more and more advanced products. So we will take a short look at the agenda before we start with our first panel. So throughout the day, we will have 8 sessions in total. The first panel will be to discuss the last 2 years' evolution of the video and TV ad market, where we will be having a discussion with ITV, TV2 Denmark, and Publitalia AT. Then we will have a session sponsored by Broadpick to assess the best strategies when it comes to picking up ad insertion and ad tracking solutions for content providers. After that, at 12, we will have a session talking about addressable TV for pay TV operators. So what are the latest developments of addressable TV markets across Europe, focusing on the operators' capabilities. So this session is sponsored by Zatu and Sina Media, and we will be having speakers representing some of the biggest regional telco operators leading the innovations on this sector. So Sky, Liberty Global, and United Group. Then we will have another session talking about the growth and opportunities of ad-supported video services and free streaming channels, so fast channels in Europe, with Paramount, Molotov, and We Do TV. After that, a session on how traditional free-to-air broadcasters are taking a turn towards digital advertising and how they valorize these new advanced inventories. Where we'll be talking with Ad Alliance, Rai Publicita, Publicis, and Nova TV. Then at 3 p.m., we will have a session sponsored by Conviva, talking about how we can unlock the streaming audience opportunities in advertising thanks to advanced measurement metrics. Following up a panel about audience measurement, so how the evolution of video and TV usages and the market structures are impacting audience measurement and what are the solutions implemented by audience measurement institutions to account for these new viewing patterns. And we will be talking with Kantar, MMS in Sweden, SKO in the Netherlands, and Mediametry in France. And then to close this day, we will have a final panel about how broadcasters integrate digital advertising in their inventories. Which is a session sponsored by Access Orca and with speakers from RTL and TV2 Hungary. And that will close the day at 5:20 p.m. So please bear with us throughout this long day. So to start off right now, we have a panel discussing the impact of COVID-19 on the advertising industry. So what were the effects of successive lockdowns on viewing behaviors? How did that impact broadcasters' advertising strategies and ad sales, and also just simply business models? So I have the pleasure to welcome 3 speakers. We have Rhys McLachlan, who's the Director of Advanced Advertising ITV. Hi.
Good morning.
Then we have Paola Colombo, who's the General Manager AdTech and Business Development for Publitalia AT. Hello.
Good morning.
And then we have René Daniel Jensen, who's the Team Manager Addressable TV for TV2 Denmark.
Good morning, guys.
So one of the first questions that I would like to ask you all is how did the successive lockdowns impact the video and TV consumptions in each of your markets? Because we've seen also that the restrictions look differently and impacted different sectors of the economy in a very varied way across European markets. So maybe we can start with Rhys, if you would like to tell us a bit about how it affected the advertising industry in the UK.
Sure. So I'm sure the audience is aware that the UK took some pretty draconian action and locking down quite severely, quite quickly, and maintained that lockdown for a considerable period of time. That obviously had a material impact on the economy, in economic confidence in the markets, and inevitably in advertiser confidence. What was fascinating during that period was that we saw a real evidence that TV became the heartbeat and the brain of the family and of the entertainment industry. Now, inevitably, some other media suffered during that period, out of home specifically, cinema, both for obvious reasons, were unable to fulfill orders and the potential which they would normally represent in the market. But television became, during the course of the lockdown, the stable, consistent standard for entertainment, for news, for updates, and as I said earlier, that were almost like the heartbeat of the family, and certainly played a critical public service role in the dissemination of information across not only the public service broadcasters, but also the commercial broadcasters in the market. What we saw in terms of viewing habits during that time was actually a strong and stable performance in linear viewing. The immediacy of linear held up and presented itself very well. In fact, some would argue that linear reasserted itself as the preeminent channel for the family and for the dissemination of that information. But then simultaneously, because there was more time available for viewers, for consumers, for customers, we saw an accelerated flight to the streaming and on-demand services. So I would say somewhat flippantly that across the course of the extended lockdown that the UK had, the constituents, the population of the UK pretty much exhausted our entire archive of VOD and catch-up content, to the extent which we were on a regular basis going deeper and deeper into the archive to release more content for viewing on our streaming and catch-up services.
All right, Paola, now if we think about the Italian market where free-to-air and linear consumption is still really high, how did COVID impact the viewing patterns?
So I can see actually happening here what Reese mentioned. So linear TV becomes central, like became the place for reliable information about COVID, for where regulators and the government was speaking about numbers and actions and so on. So we had a central in that, and we saw, of course, viewing exploding all of a sudden because, of course, everyone was at home. At the same time, though, we saw also digital devices exploding. So, Italy was a bit lagging behind in digitalization compared to other countries in Europe, and that actually sped that up. So there were suddenly more devices available. We counted more than 12 million more devices, of which 3 million were connected TVs being shipped and bought across the country, and that of course incremented our digital viewing as well. We more than doubled volumes on our platform. And the nice thing is that both habits of consumption stayed across. So we have measured that, of course, if we compare ourselves now that lockdowns have been released compared to the 2020, of course, the total audience is down. But if we compare Mediaset to 2019, where actually we see that people almost rediscovered linear TV. So our audiences are up compared to 2019. And interestingly, it looks like younger audiences have discovered TV again. So we've catched up also on those audiences. Plus, and that was a development in the market. Our JIC, Auditel, started releasing measurement of viewing of the same program across devices to deduplicate it and with the target. And we realized that if we add TV consumption happening on demand on connected TVs or on second screens, then our audiences are almost 4 percentage point up to 2019. So it's a very interesting trend. It's like as Reese mentioned, they rediscovered and TV has reimposed itself as a central medium, as shown to be reliable, and they almost rediscovered the wealth of content that you have from series to news to entertainment and so on. So it's been actually, on that sense, if we have to see the half full glass, it brought like a new enthusiasm to TV.
Very interesting, yeah. And René, what happened in Denmark?
I think what we experienced was quite similar to what a lot of other TV stations around the world experienced at that time, and I think it's the same for England and Italy. You know, we're owned by the state, so naturally a lot of people look to us for information because we were dealing with something that we've never seen before. So all of the time there were press conferences, and you know, apart from the information, you know, what else was there to do? So like Riz said, also our you know, on-demand archive was pretty used. So yeah, viewing time went up. We got a lot of new subscribers to our streaming platform, and as you guys also said, linear TV was like reborn again. So now we're just excited to see whether we're gonna be able to uphold this level, or we're gonna see you know, new ways of or going back to the old ways of using linear TV again.
So yeah, you all mentioned that linear TV was considered a very relevant source of information, also became way more important during that time. Since you're operating OTT platforms, which also offer on-demand, can you talk maybe about the difference in terms of linear channel consumption and on-demand catalogs consumption on the platform? Maybe Riz, if you want to start.
We operate, I guess, in a really fluid dynamic between our linear and our on-demand. We cross-promote heavily between the two. Linear is inevitably the place for premieres, the place for our big tentpole events. It's where we present, you know, our drama drops, and it's the home of our sporting and Saturday night light entertainment, you know, big tent shows. But we are also, you know, we have become kind of critically aware of the role that the streaming and the on-demand components of our business have in contributing to our overall proposition. And like I said, the fluidity with which viewers seem to be adept at moving between the linear scheduled television and the self-served consumption of entertainment should we fail to fulfill anything, you know, any desire, any demand on that linear schedule. What we saw across the course of the pandemic, and then we see continuing to play out into 22, is this normalization of this pattern of behavior. Now, you know, in the UK, again, speaking glibly, you'd say that 90% of UK households have a smart TV. Of those smart TVs, 70 or 80% of those are plugged in and enabled for the smart component of the smart television. And, you know, we have, alongside, you know, our other counterpart broadcasters, have distribution of our apps and our players into those environments. And then what we saw was people would come into the conventional linear viewing experience in the first instance, graze around, look around a bit, perhaps watch something, perhaps look to watch the first episode of a drama, and then we would promote, and we're not the only business that does this, but we would promote immediately after that first episode, that premiere of a drama, that the remaining 5 episodes would be available immediately for consumption on our hub app and the smart TV environment. Now, the reason that we had to do that, it was because that is what the market, the viewing market, believes is the normal way for consuming television now. You know, we've had the Netflix of this world normalize box setification, you know, that binge viewing behavior where you can't just watch one episode and you can't sit on a cliffhanger and wait for, you know, another week to be brought up to speed with the storyline. And not only has that changed the way that we are distributing, i.e., you know, scheduling and distributing our content, it's actually changing the way that we're commissioning and producing. So it's had a fundamental impact on the studios part of ITV, who are reappraising and reassessed how we structure storylines so as that we can lean into that pattern of viewing behavior, where box certification and the cliffhangerization of content compels further and deeper viewing and a greater relationship between the provider of the content, the advertising experience, of course, and also the viewer, and the affinity with which the viewer holds your channel.
Thanks, Chris. René, I want to come to you. In Denmark, TV to play is a huge service. which is also competing with SVOD player, but what makes it singular is that it's coming from a traditional broadcaster. So you have this assets of linear channels, of fresh content, news, etc. Can you tell us also how the distribution in terms of viewing was on the platform at the time of COVID, at the time of lockdowns, where people crave for more news, and if this is something that we still see now, if that like stuck in the habits, or if we came back to a sort of pre-COVID situation?
Sure, you're completely right that we're born out of a traditional TV station. So a lot of our viewing on our streaming platform is our live channel. So that's people canceling their cable TV and going fully, streaming. We call those cable cutters. So obviously, that has been a huge part of our viewing traditionally. But during COVID, we saw that on-demand viewing was getting almost just as big as the linear viewing. What we come from is that the on-demand part is primarily for catch-up. So we run it at Monday at 8 o'clock, and then all the people who aren't home, they watch it Tuesday or Wednesday instead. But I can surely recognize that now people just saw maybe one episode, they thought, oh, we like that, and then they saw the rest of the season within a day or two. Yeah. And also what we actually did in order to be able to, meet this demand from the viewers was that we actually moved forward some of our, releases, some of the premieres that were scheduled for later that year. So we moved them forward in order to be able to, put content into the platform so that we didn't run out. But also, like you said, Riz, some of our old shows got popular again. So people rediscovered what we actually had in our archive. So we usually struggle with getting people to see some of the old content, but during COVID, that was definitely better than it used to be. So we hope that's going to last as well.
All right, and Paola, I'm coming to you with a similar question in terms of whether those habits are going to stay or not 2 years after the peak of COVID. You mentioned, for example, that in Italy there was a huge boom in sales of devices, connected devices. So that probably will shape the market for the upcoming years. Is there also other things that will change on a long-lasting frame, you think, after this period of time?
I think being omnichannel, which is something we speak a lot when it comes to retailers and when it comes to direct to consumer businesses, but we are as well. And so we see that. We see consumers starting one content on linear and then finishing up maybe on on-demand platforms. So that has become natural for people to have access content wherever it is. It's more like a given from granted. So we are focusing a lot on user experience because we know that is paramount. That makes a difference between using a service or choosing a different one. And definitely content. And I don't want to anticipate maybe one of the following questions, but for us, it was the occasion to launch a mixed model, which is a mixed SVOD model, so that we could accommodate on our platform and distribute vertical channels. Because once consumers have the habit to go, your platform becomes a reference, so it's a go-to platform, then you want them to find what's of broad interest, but also their vertical passion. And with a mix of AVOD and SVOD, we can accommodate both, the large content that very general that appeals to large audiences, but also very vertical passions and content that smaller communities can tap into and consume for them.
So now I would like to understand also how all these evolutions impacted ad sales. So there were very different phenomena clashing each other, let's say, with huge peaks in terms of content demands, which creates way more opportunities for inventories, but at the same time also advertisers struggling to keep up with campaign investments, sometimes also retracting campaigns from broadcast. How did it impact you as broadcasters and your inventories sales? So maybe we can start with René.
Yeah, I remember that time was a bit of a roller coaster for us. You know, we're so lucky that usually we're sold out most of the year, but we definitely weren't for the first month or two. Naturally, there was a lot of uncertainty in the market. You know, as I said earlier, nobody knew what we were dealing with. So the first reaction from a lot of the advertisers was to pull their marketing budgets because they didn't know how long this was going to last or if they were even going to stay in business. Because a lot of advertisers had to close down stores, shopping malls, restaurants, car dealers, and stuff like that. So obviously they got nervous and they wanted to cancel most of the budgets that were at TV2. But I think once we recovered from that shock and actually had a good dialogue with a lot of the advertisers, they were coming back because we were able to do a partnership with a big research agency in Denmark. We were able to conclude that in the long term, it was way more expensive, you know, just to shut it all down. Because if you want to rebuild your brand afterwards, you'd have to spend a lot more money than just turning it a little bit down and then do branding. So that was actually how we saw a lot of the advertisers recover. But obviously there were you know, categories that were completely shut down. We have categories that are still dealing with you know, supply chain issues. So even though they want to sell, they can't sell because they don't have the goods. So we're not fully recovered, but I think within the first month or two where everything was chaos, we recovered really well, and then we obviously benefited from a lot of more inventory than we had earlier.
All right. And in Italy, Paola, did you see also specific changes, especially in terms of typologies of advertisers, as René mentioned, where some were hit way more harshly than others?
Yes, of course. So we saw FMCG advertisers, especially food categories, you know, actually having a boost in sales during the period, while, for example, others like cinemas or production companies or, you know, the automotive sector and others were badly hit. But I think, again, so we've been very flexible. And I think the strategy, which wasn't really a strategy, was just like a natural reaction to what was happening, was to partner with our advertisers. And we tried to help them figure out, you know, what was the best thing for all of them. We had them with research, as René mentioned, and we had them, you know, creating spots for them, you know, making creatives, because it was hard for them, you know, to shoot, and then we would use, for example, archive images and so on. And I think what was interesting is that, you know, companies are made of humans, so you could see, you know, the impact. You know, first panic, they canceled investments, and then they started going back again, and they, in a way, rediscovered other functions of advertising. So you don't do just advertising for selling, but they did it because they want to show their brands was close to people, you know, to position themselves and to almost give back what they were, you know, what they were seeing happening to them, you know, with you know, sales increases sometimes. We saw them using advertising to inform the consumer that maybe they were enabling online sales, they were going online, their stores were open again, or they were closed. So that became an information channel for brands. And of course, we see a variety of advertising interpreting in different ways. But it was, I think it pushed, in a way, creativity, and it pushed to different boundaries. And another thing we saw, and I think that's going to stay, is direct to consumer businesses. So not only traditional brands starting to sell online directly to consumers, but also, you know, like OTT platforms, you know, starting to advertise massively. Some entered the market probably ahead of time, or just like a coincidence in the same time of lockdown. And so we saw a different mix of advertisers.
So Alice, I'm coming to you with the same question. How did ITV work during the lockdown economy with your advertisers?
Well, 2020 was my first year at ITV, during the course of which we experienced double-digit decline in advertising revenue, and I think that's more. I don't think that's causation, but I think the jury's out on that. The reality is, you know, like all media channels in 2020 specifically, we suffered, you know, demonstrably as advertisers had to, and large brands had to rethink their marketing strategies. Look, it was a year in several parts. The first quarter was very good. The middle half, particularly bad, as the most punitive aspects of the lockdown impacted, and then the final quarter was actually very buoyant. During the course of which, and has kind of, we still have a lingering after effects today. You know, the travel category specifically, airlines, cruise ships, holiday businesses, etc., have not recovered to pre 2019 levels. But in the space that they've left behind, and as Paolo has touched on, we have a large range of brand new to TV advertisers that are looking to exploit the benefits the platform can bring. If you know, for the viewers in the UK, you'll know that you're seeing on a regular basis, high frequency basis, food delivery services. So we have a massively competitive landscape for Deliveroo and Just Eat, the local brands and food delivery services. 10-minute grocery brands. So that's a wash with marketing cash at the moment. I think at one point we were carrying advertising for 4 mattress in a box brands. And then of course you've got your recipes in a box and your delivery services and a lot of this DTC stuff that came through. So that was encouraging. We've seen that pattern continue to sustain itself through into 2022. Now there was very much a COVID crisis of two parts. We had 2020, which was, as I've explained, you know, particularly and horrific in the advertising markets. And then we've had 2021, which was a record revenue year for ITV. We posted revenues the likes of which we've never seen before, and that was, you know, representative of the great emancipation, the great unlocking of the population as they rushed out, by all accounts, to spend, you know, capital and cash reserves that they'd been unable to get rid of across the course of 2020. Now, obviously, that's run slap bang into a cost of living crisis and all other manner of, you know, global patterns which are impacting the UK particularly badly at this time. But we've seen, and we're confident in 22 that we are back to 2019 levels of sustained confidence in the market. There's one thing that we ought to point out, and this is particularly true of ITV, and I believe Paolo and Renaud may have similar feelings or be experiencing similar dynamics, which was during that most critical phase of what was essentially a global lockdown, all the production businesses went into lockdown as well, right? So our ability, you know, we're a hand-to-mouth integrated producer broadcaster. You know, 90% of what goes out on our channels we produce. So we need to generate ad revenue to fund the content that we commission and produce. Now, we weren't manifesting in the same way in the ad revenue, but simultaneously, all the production crews were locked down. We couldn't produce. We had to get special exemption from the government to keep our soaps on air, right? But all the big dramas, you know, Hollywood went into lockdown. Our big drama slate went into lockdown. So there was a fallow period during which we could not see through the completion of productions. And so when our library started to get exhausted, and when our archive was being rinsed, you know, we had to look elsewhere, and we had to really look deep into our catalogue to continue to entertain people. Now, obviously, that fallow period is now being addressed, and we have a regular slate of releases that have been, you know, been held back through 2020, early 2021. But what also happened during that period is that the fallow period simultaneously impacted not only broadcasters, but the global SVOD businesses as well, right? So the Netflix and the Primes of this world, and the Disneys and the HBO Maxes, etc., they all suffered from the same scarcity of content and the inability to produce that content. Now, what that means in real terms is those global businesses with much larger, you know, capital reserves than a local broadcaster, the likes of which the three of us are, were able to turbocharge their investments in the market. And so it's becoming increasingly difficult for local broadcasters to compete for talent unless we amortize effort and co-produce. We are more often than not being outgunned by the global businesses who had a brilliant lockdown, let's not forget, massive growth in SVOD subscriptions, more capital in the bank, and that capital gets converted to, you know, the nitrous that goes into the tank for the purchasing of content, which would otherwise be competing on a fairly even and equitable basis between themselves and the broadcasters globally. So there's been a real shift in power dynamics that was accelerated through that lockdown period.
Yeah, that's a very important phenomenon, which I think will also impact content production in the next years. So if we talk about those competitors as what players, we've seen also that European broadcasters have more and more invested in direct-to-consumer businesses, so also driving revenues from subscription. That's the case for all three companies that you're representing. That's a way, I guess, like Chris said, to bring more capital to the bank and also rely less on the instability of advertising revenue that hit way harder during COVID. So how did this last 2 years also impact your business models when it comes to bundling AVOD and SVOD streams of revenues? Paola, you already started talking about this earlier, so maybe you can have the floor.
Yes. So we historically actually we had a SVOD platform. So I don't know if it was launched, I think in 2015 or something like that. So we had a tradition of a SVOD platform. But what we did during a couple of years ago is to put the AVOD platform together with the SVOD platform, so that we had like a pyramid model where you have the base of the AVOD platform, so users can access free content, short content, or they can register to watch full-length episodes of our contents, and then from there they can decide to subscribe, either light subscription to have extra added value services like download and go, or watch outside of Italy. And then they can also subscribe to vertical channels where we can have series, it can be documentaries. There's very, very vertical interests, and that was to accommodate, as I explained, also the possibility to have more content, more niche content into the platform. We also actually, something that's not very niche, we also had the football rights for the Champions League in streaming. So that was, again, another new thing for us to have on a streaming platform, with all that that it means, with CDNs, having an appropriate delivery network, for a lot of streamers watching at the same time, a live event. So it's all very, very interesting, and it is proven to work really well. I think the next thoughts that we are doing is about distributions. Where do you distribute content without losing your nature? Are we more an owned and operated platform, or are we more content production and distribution? And it's probably somewhere in between, because by nature we have a good, as Brice mentioned, a good proportion of our content is produced by us, but we also have some rights that we have. So it's a mixed model, and I think we are going and experimenting and see what's happening, as slowly we'll add pieces to it, also being reactive to what happens and what the consumers are doing.
René, I think TV2 Play also has been working on both subscription and advertising revenues since you started, pretty much. Can you talk a little bit about this, and maybe also what changed in the last 2 years?
Yeah, I think we were actually lucky, or skilled enough to have a business structure that was really good fitted for COVID, actually, like some of the bigger competitors like Netflix and HBO, and so we're 100% subscription based. But so we experienced a lot of new subscribers coming in during that, because what else were they going to do? They could be at home knitting or reading a book, or watching TV. So what we do is we have both the live channels and the on-demand content in the same platform. So we do dynamic ad insertion on our linear breaks, and then we combine that with the ads before our on-demand content. So on the on-demand part, you can both buy a premium with no ads before, but you can also pay like €5 less and then get up to 3 minutes ads before your OD content. So that's the business model for us. So we were able to have growth in subscribers and extra viewing time per user, and the inventory just went up, so we had more to sell, basically.
And Dries, I think ITV has been capitalizing a lot on the direct-to-consumer strategy lately, also with integrating content from BritBox recently. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, so we have a BritBox SVOD proposition. It's a global proposition. It's a challenging proposition in the UK, where we are a free-to-air broadcaster. So selling subs for ad-free catch-up for content you can otherwise see for free with ads elsewhere within our estate is, that's a real marketing challenge. What we've appraised across the course of the last couple of years is that we have the capacity and we have the strategy, and we believe we have the technical wherewithal to reimagine our business as a streaming first, digitally native business that is augments or complements a linear business in a seamless way. So in November of this year, we'll be launching ITVX, which is that reimagination of our entire estate into a single verticalized proposition, which includes SVOD tiers, those people who really have an aversion to ads, but will primarily be an AVOD funded next generation streaming service that includes simulcast with all the digital ad functionality which Renee just described, that will have catch up in conventional sense, that will have archive and box setting, and that will also have up to 20 fast channels of scheduled streamed archive content for various genres or actors or talent that we have. So we are all in on the reinvention of ITV as a primary video proposition in the UK, but a way in which enables us to harmonise all those assets into a singular verticalised structure that makes it really easy for our viewers to understand where to go, and once they're there, how to navigate through it. We're really excited about the launch of it. It is, I guess, for the last couple of years, while the market has moved so quickly, we've had so many global entrants that have kind of rewritten the rules of what television is. For the last couple of years, and without being disingenuous to the business that I work for and the colleagues, who are endeavouring to make it a success, we've been playing checkers on a chessboard, while the Netflixes and the Amazons and the Disney Pluses and everybody else has been out properly reimagining television without being kind of anchored to a lot of the legacy things that traditional broadcasters have to deal with. We've been doing our best. We're on the board. All right, but we're just making diagonal jumps, whereas those other businesses have been playing with a set of chess pieces. And finally, in 2022 or late 22, we'll be in a position to be able to compete with those businesses on a level footing with a reimagined proposition that works for customers and that has got advertising and is native to the proposition as well. So better viewing experience, which equates to better advertising experience, which generates business outcomes, which is the business we're in, right?
Yeah, but that's a very interesting point, because now we've also seen that in the last month, global SVOD players have been considering integrating ad inventories. We also see a growing interest for fast channels, so way back to linear, way back to what traditional broadcasters have been doing for years, actually. How do you think this will impact the future of TV and video, and especially on digital streaming? Do you think that what we see now and the stacking of streaming services of SVOD on, like, focusing on subscription and on-demand content will slowly move towards what we know from traditional TV? Or is it two propositions that will continue to cohabitate on different platforms, let's say?
So look, first we need to grapple with the reality that the cost of living crisis, which is certainly impacting demonstrably in my market, really badly in my market at the moment, will result in a lot of those SVOD services being dropped. All right, you've got some which are could be considered essential. Prime, for example, that's a beautifully verticalized Amazon business. Within which your monthly subscription, you happen to get video as a benefit, but really it's all the fast delivery and all the access to all the other Amazon services, which are the value propositions there. Video is almost like an afterthought, but they'll continue to have their Prime subscription, and then there's room for one other. So I saw a number of consultants last week present at a conference, all of who concurred that most UK households will have no more than two SVOD streaming services. Right now, obviously, what a lot of those other businesses will do will pivot to be advertising businesses or ad-light businesses, you know, they'll restructure their commercial models. Now, what we also have on very good authority is they're all going to try and replicate TV. They're going after TV buyers and TV budgets, and that puts us in a great position. TV is our DNA. It's the business that we do. We live and breathe it every day. We are the experts in how to maximize the power of television to drive brand outcomes. So I'm really confident that even though there will be a increase or surplus of supply brought into the market by these AVOD services that look to, these SVOD services that look to pivot to AVOD, we have a brilliant intellectual basis to build a better business model for ourselves off the back of that threat. It's TV. Everybody wants to be TV. You know, the new TV. You know, TV is the new TV, right? And that's what a lot of these SVOD businesses are now realizing.
Lene, I'm coming to you now because I think the Scandinavian market looks quite different, and the stacking of services has been going on for already 10 years or so since Netflix and HBO arrived on the market. I think we are already at way more than 2 services per household in the region. How do you think also this will evolve with the current shift towards advertising models?
It's going to be exciting times, that's for sure. Just to answer your question, I think that, you know, a normal household here have like 4 or 5, you know, services at one time. You know, we really already see these guys as our competitors because we compete for time, and that's for sure. They're not commercial yet, but I think they're all going to be, and I think that's a sign that they're under pressure. You know, we saw Netflix for the first time losing subscribers, which was quite a shock, I think, to a lot of people. But when you think about it, maybe even it's logical, you know, after COVID, because it's all a matter of viewing behavior. How do you want to watch your content? Is it like, you know, the TV feel where you just sit down and turn on and there's something that you can see, or you know that it's coming at 8 o'clock on Monday, or is it more like a, you know, I'm gonna watch a show of something, and I'm gonna watch 2 or 3 or 4 or even 5 episodes if you binge it. But what I think is different for Scandinavia is that we don't compete, you know, in English content because we know we're too small to do that. We can't do that. We do our best to make, you know, quality Danish content because we know that Netflix can't do that properly yet. They've tried a few times and it's very expensive for them, and they get, you know, very few viewers on it. So they haven't really cracked that code yet. But that's what we're trying to do in order to be special, you know, in the subscription market. And for now, that succeeded, but it's definitely going to be exciting times to see whether or not they're going to crack the code, because then we're going to be under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, Paola, I guess it's also a similar idea in Italy where local content and free-to-air viewing is already still very strong.
It is. And I think, you know, of course, I think anyone would rather be with less competitor than but I think we've adapted to a lot of things and we've proven to be competitive. And you know, on viewing, it's going to be local content, as it was mentioned, because of course, you know, you can try. We do the example for food because we are Italian and everything is about food, right? But you know, you might want to have some exotic food sometime. You might have some international content sometimes, but then, you know, you go to your familiar. Reflects your culture as well. And for example, these are the production that on our channels are the most popular. You know, we are good at producing warm local entertainment, and that's what makes us unique. And I think it's hardly comparable to what all these platforms are doing. So that's our unicity and unicity. Sorry, again, it's a difficult English word here. But the other point is that we will have to compete with them, but also the lines are going to be blurred. You know, some of them are going to be partly competitors, but others could be distributing platform for some of our contents. The content now has a longer life than before because, you know, you just don't have live on TV channel, but you can have it on demand, and then you have different windows. So we could monetize maybe our content differently, and that could be a different revenue source than advertising for us. So I think all the models are going to be adapted to a new competitive landscape. So the advertising bit is going to be harder because there will be more players, but there could be other options. Or, for example, we've seen DAZN entering the market, and we are representing DAZN on the market. So we are the sales house, for example. So that was a threat, and now it's an opportunity as well. So I think what we've learned with COVID, I think it's that flexibility is a great asset, and so we'll have to be more and more flexible in the future.
Can I build on that, if I will? Because I think they're great sentiments, and I think often, certainly in conferences where I'm just surrounded by other television people, we tend to be somewhat myopic and somewhat miserable about the competitive threats which surround us, and the businesses are constantly looking to eat our own lunches. But if you look at what our respective businesses have done through the course of the COVID, a global pandemic that impacted every aspect of everybody's lives, TV not only was resilient, it proved itself to be an essential public service, the likes of which could not be matched by any of the other platforms, any other services provided in the market. And further to which the three of us have just discussed, not only resilient, but adaptive and agile. And I think the speed at which we went into COVID is only a fraction of the speed at which we're reinventing our businesses coming out the other end. And I think, and I said, typically in a lot of these forums, we tend to be a bit woeful and a bit, it's all really terrible because all these massive businesses are coming to attack us. If you look back at what we've achieved as our respective businesses and as an industry over the course of the last couple of years, television in our respective markets, and I believe I speak for my European colleagues across a broader territory here, is in a brilliant place. Right, we really have reinvented ourselves, and I think collectively have been really adept at leaning into these challenges and finding it within our businesses that we can address these, and that we are in a brilliant position to continue to provide the services in the entertainment, in the information, and in the advertising channels like we have in the past. We reinvent ourselves. We are resilient, but now we've added to that resilient digitally native agility, which puts us as being fit for purpose to solve for all the problems moving forward.
So I have, I think, one last question, also coming from this flexibility and agility topic. We've seen a lot of broadcasters adapting really fast to digital advertising and implementing new inventories such as addressable TV with targeting, new metrics, new capabilities, which are offering very interesting opportunities for their advertisers. A quick word for each of you on how addressable TV has been performing over the last 2 years, if you've seen interesting evolutions also after this COVID crisis. Paola, maybe if you want to start.
So you mentioned, so we really accelerated addressable TV offering. So a lot of formats, digital interactive formats, video, of course, and it's been really exciting because it's literally testing and learning with the market. So our approach has always been very open and say, okay, let's see what we can do. Any advertiser come in with an idea, we were okay, let's see whether we can do it together, if it makes sense, and go on. And I think companies were very excited about the opportunity. I think they were willing to have TV do something exciting and new after a long time that has been oops, I think you've lost me. Okay.
We can still hear you, but I think your camera broke. Yeah, you can still talk. We hear you.
And that has been growing really fast. Of course, we had to find some sort of measurement. We are learning and developing as we go, but we find some openness. Of course, we are talking to other stakeholders in the market. We're talking and to other tables as well in Europe, because we need to standardize as much as possible to have it healthily growing and becoming scalable. But I think that has also enabled a lot of new advertisers coming to TV and actually seeing how willing they were to approach TV, but maybe it didn't make sense for them before because maybe they had local distribution or they appear to, very niche target. And now they could approach it to the point that we are looking at a self-serve platform for small, medium businesses to managing also the smaller cuts and smaller campaigns for them. So it's been really, really exciting. It's really like a new life to TV.
It's nice to hear. René, I know that TV2 Play has been offering addressable TV for many years now. How have been your products performing in the last years, and how do you see them also evolving in the upcoming one?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned earlier, that COVID was an opportunity for us to just build on top of what we already had. Because for us, it's been primarily a matter of how much inventory we have to sell. So obviously with a lot more viewing time and a lot more subscribers, we were able to build on top of that. And of course, we hope to be able to do that going forward as well. And what we've also experienced with addressable TV is that we're able to pull in smaller advertisers who only want to advertise in a smaller geographical area or a certain target group, and they can't do that on TV because that's more like the shotgun method. Put it in there and you hit a lot of people. But here you can pick them out, and that's lowering the barrier for smaller businesses to go on TV or TV-like environments.
Yeah, and Chris, maybe just in 30 seconds to talk a little bit about what ITV has been doing. Sorry, we're really getting close to the end.
18 months ago, we launched Planet V as our primary proprietary programmatic addressable solution in the market. It's been fully normalized as business as usual for all the buyers in the market now. This year, we'll do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of revenue self-service exclusively through the platform using ITV data to build addressable audiences into our digital properties, within which simulcast addressable forms part of the inventory mix. And then more latterly, we are oversubscribed on Ad Labs, the concept that we released to the market last October, which is digital innovation within our existing estate. We cannot sell enough tickets to the pilots. Advertiser appetite to innovate with TV is so strong, and we're delighted to be able to capitalize on that. I think, to reiterate what I said several minutes ago, it's a really exciting future for those of us who work in broadcast and the advertisers that are with us on this journey, and the viewers, of course. There's another way in which we're democratizing content and distributing content is like it's never been before.
Yeah. So thank you very much, all three of you, for your time and for your very valuable insights on the industry. Please stay with us for the next session. So we'll be back in a few minutes talking with Broadpick actually on how to best implement ad tech solutions to deliver ads and get trusted metrics on an addressable environment. It was really a pleasure to host this session. So thank you, Paola, Rhys, and René for being with us.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.